So there is a new tire on the block for the military H1 Humvee department, and we're going to test them to see if they're any good or are they just foreign junk. Stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So we're going to be working on the M1009 in this video, more specifically the wheels. So I actually have Hummer H1 wheels on here, and it is time to replace these, which makes it kind of a dilemma, especially if you guys own any of these. You're kind of in the same boat. So which tires do you go to? Because these are 16.5-inch tires, so there's not a whole lot of options. The military offers what, like I guess 3 options: the Michelins, the Goodyears, and the BFGs. These are the BFG Bajas, and these are DOT date 2009, so they're a couple presidents old by now, and they need to be replaced. And then I got to consider the mission for my truck. So primarily I drive this thing on the street, frequently goes in the sand, and then occasionally I do like to do trail rides, which mean a little bit of rocks and a little bit of mud, but you know, really no crazy rock crawling and airing down. So anyway, what tires are there available? And pretty much you're stuck with the military ones, or you have the Interco options, which are super swampers, but we're trying to improve the ride, not to make it worse. So we're not going to be putting super swampers on there. So it's been a frustrating thing. I've tried weights, I've tried beads, I've tried those Hummers, you know, like weight rings and stuff like that. Up until recently, there hasn't been a whole lot of options, but now they just came out with this, probably pretty recently because I haven't seen them around. This is called the Petlas Explero PT451. Now, initially when I heard about that, I'm like, is this just another cheap Chinese knockoff like Achilles or Ironman tires? And it turns out no. These are made in Turkey, and they're made from a company that makes military tires. So they make F-16 tires and all those big transport tires, and now they make a Hummer replacement tire. I believe they come in 8 and 10 ply. These are the 10 ply ones. They work with the run flat inserts if you want to try that. But either way, this point of this is we're going to be installing these and testing them to see how they are. I think they look pretty cool. So we got it in the cosmetics, but that's not the most important part. We just need to make sure they run smooth and they get good traction. So anyway, before I do this, I decided I'm going to be getting rid of the 12 bolts and going to a set of 24 bolts. So I picked up these from Felt's Tire. They came in really good condition, but one of them had just a little bit of surface rust, probably from sitting on the top of the pallet. So I scuffed these up and we're going to go outside and paint these. All right, so over here we're going to be using the Rust-Oleum just flat black paint, and then Valspar enamel hardener. This will kind of harden up the paint. I don't like using kind of rattle cans on this stuff just simply because it doesn't really hold up. So I'm mixing this up with the 4221, 1 part of this, 4 parts of paint. All right, now, so the paint on all 4 is done. You can kind of take a look in here. It came out exactly how I liked. I didn't want it so smooth that it was glossy. I wanted just a little bit of texture, but again, not too much texture that you couldn't wipe it clean if it got any dust. So it's nice and smooth, and I think it looks great. Remember, this has a hardener in there, so it actually is very strong. It won't chip off or anything like that. So now we got to get to assembling these. All right, real quick. So I have one of the wheels up here just to kind of 2 things. Explain the difference between this and a civilian rim, and talk about kind of the beadlock options or run flat options. So the H1 rims are basically designed to be able to change on the side of the road with no tools whatsoever. So there is no detent here to be able to install it, so you can't even use a machine if you wanted to. But the main difference is the bead setting area. So right here on a normal car, it's 5 degrees, and there's even usually a hump here, and that allows the bead to stick there and not fall off even when there's low air pressure. These don't have that. It's a 15-degree area with no locking area. So actually there's a risk that the tire could come off the bead when there's no pressure in here, just because that's what it's designed to do. So you need to consider your options. I'm not recommending anything, I'm just kind of stating the main options. They make a 2-piece metal one. It's big, it's bulky, and they're hard to find right now. I believe there's a couple rubber options. I have these Hutchison run flats, and so basically it is a thick, heavy-duty, solid rubber tire that goes on here, and it's mixed with the beadlock. So you can see that when this is installed on here, it will essentially force the bead to the edge even with 0 pressure. They're heavy and they're hard to balance and they're really hard to install, and I heard the hardest part is actually getting them out, and that's kind of what I'm worried about right now. And so I debated putting these in there, but first I wanted to be more objective and make sure that the tires could balance and ride smooth without those, just in case I did have any bad ride, I wouldn't have to blame these. So I will install these later, but I'm not gonna do it right now. Probably the more popular option is like there's a company like Trailworthy Fab makes the PVC inserts, but there's a couple problems with those. And the main problem is one of these guys on the forum, he installed them, and when he tightened the bolts down, it actually cut into the tire because the bead on the Petlas tires thicker than the Baja tires. So I don't think it was anybody's necessarily fault. In fact, when you ask Trailworthy Fab for a set of the PVCs, they ask you what tires they have. They're not really familiar with the Petlas, and because these have a very, very beefy bead, I think they just don't know what size to cut them yet, and I'm sure they will figure it out. The only other problem is when I first was getting H1 wheels, I want to say the Trailworthy Fab ones were like $20 or $30 each. They are now $600 shipped to my door. And I don't know about you, but that's kind of excessive. So it's just blue PVC, buy a 5-foot section, cut them exactly to the length I think that work. Now the last option is to run them without, and that is your own personal choice. If you air down or have a flat tire, it's most likely going to come off. You'll lose the bead. But as long as you keep your tires aired up, like I'm talking 10 PSI or more, it shouldn't be an issue. All right, so now we'll go on to assembly. So we need to get these as straight as possible. So one thing you'll notice, and I'll zoom in here, it is possible that these can move around inside there. There actually is a washer that can be installed into these that actually is a centering washer that basically just goes in these detents so that it locks them in the correct place, because any bit of fluctuation here way out on the outside of the rim is going to end up in a massive imbalance. So they really need to be straight. And because those washers are no longer available, I found a great way is just to use like AC O-rings. So I just got a couple of these O-rings here. The size is not so much important, but as long as you have the exact same size. But anyway, I found that these work really well for centering in there. You just put them exactly opposite sides. So I'm actually going to do a couple extra steps because I really want to make sure that these things are balanced correctly or the best I can. So one thing I found is these are always just a few ounces off. So I'm actually going to put them on the balancer, spin them, and mark where they have their heaviest side. And then we're going to do the same thing with the tire. And that'll allow us to put them on opposite sides to have hopefully use the least amount of weight possible. So when you're assembling these, it's important really not to use these at first because these are a lock washer. And if you tighten these on off multiple times, you're going to hate your life because it's just going to destroy these. You're going to have to replace them. So these are just, I think they're 1/2 by 20 fine thread. And I use these for assembly just because they make it so much easier. And once we're happy with the setup and before we air it up, that's when we're going to actually put on the other ones. So right now I got it set up on static and it says that it wants 1.75 here. Next thing we're going to do is go install the valve stem. Now you can use any kind of O-ring lube. I actually just used the regular tire lube on this. Now sometimes these things are too big and sometimes they're too little. These ones that Phelps Tires gives you work perfect. So I've had no trouble. Just make sure they have a nice clean place to sit, and they usually fit in here. Look at that. Now they're not directional, but I always like to go DOT date out, just so I don't know, I can read them, and they're consistent. And these are where those O-rings we installed are really gonna shine by helping it keep it. Just my technique. I kind of do an initial 50-pound torque on just these 4, and I'll show you why I just do the 4 just a second. So I've been able to do these without a bead blaster using this, and this is kind of the secret, but still it's not foolproof. You got to wiggle it around. It still can be very frustrating. So I do kind of both. I use a bead blaster and I use this. And essentially all this is just an air line. So we're just going to take out the valve stem core. We're going to install the air line directly onto this. Now comes the fun part. So what we're going to do is hook up an open air line directly to it. It's not working. Plug my ears. I'm not going to put too much air in there because I only got 4 bolts. Okay, we hook up our air line. Nope. So that goes to show you can easily install these without a bead blaster. It just sometimes comes in very handy if you have one. You get one of the ones with a little tank, but you can also do it just with a free-flowing air hose. That rush of air will definitely seat them. All right, so cancel your gym membership. Here comes the work. So we got our 24 nuts here, and this is why I inflated it with the 4 temporary nuts first, because if you try to tighten these to like 100 foot-pounds, you're just going to spin around. It has to be locked in there. So we have all of 5 psi in here right now, but that is plenty enough to lock it into place. So you'll want to lube the threads. Trust me, if you don't, you will hate your life. So I've done it both with just some silicone spray. I don't like WD-40 because it kind of stains the paint. You can also use anti-seize. That's another good lubricant, but again, this can stain the paint too, but I've had best luck with this. We're going to go through and just put a little bit on each one of these, and then we're going to start installing the nuts. And we're kind of going to go slow. You can't impact them down, because if you impact them down, it seems like they get hot, and once they get a lot of heat, that's when they melt, and that's when they start to freeze up, and that's when you'll start stripping them out. Alright, so now that we got them tightened, it's time to get them on the balancer. So the balancer is set up for static, not the dynamic, so it's just weight on one side. But now we got to lift these 130-pound tire combos. I'm going to kill myself. Alright. Close.
This thing?
Yep. Alright, ready?
Yep.
So.
Go. Down.
Alright.
Oh, good.
Get a little start here, and initially it's going to be way off, so I go ahead and put my weight on this thing because it will shake it a little bit, but we'll get it under control. – 16 ounces on this side. So we're going to try something real quick. Alright, so here's a little trick we're going to try. Here's the previous alignment. Cool thing about these having no bead is we can actually rotate them all the way around. So we rotate about 180 degrees. There's still no air in the tire, but we'll go and spin it up and see if we get a different result. Moving the tire around to get us a little bit closer. One thing you can do on these is let them sit out in the sun for a while at like 50 psi, and that'll also take out some of the bends, because I think they just sit in the warehouse squished and they're not quite round until after they have air. Alright, so yes, we started out with almost 18 ounces, now we're down to just 9 ounces. Alright, so eventually I put 9 ounces right there. So what I like to do is actually tape the weights there, because sometimes you'll put 9 ounces here, then it'll ask for like a quarter here. So if you just slide it over a little bit, it makes it go away. So the tire machine is no longer shaking, which is a good thing. Nice, so now we're down to just 1 1/4. So almost got this fully balanced. Spin it one more time and see where we're at. Seems nice and smooth. The run out seems good. Slowing down. Give it a little assist. Survey says we got 0 0. So not too bad. So that's 3 tires at 0 0. 1 more to go. All right, tire number 4. Give it a little assist. See how bad we are. Right now there's only 5 psi, so I can already see that not quite round. Again, I think there's a flat spot on these tires just from sitting in there. So I might just pump this one up, but we'll see where it's heavy. Alright, 8 ounces. That's not too bad to begin with. It's more standard. I was kind of surprised at the other one being 16. Let the air out. This is where we currently are. So even with no air, we can still spin it and it'll give us a rough idea of how close we are. Well, we actually went up. We're now at 10. All right, so we started with 9 ounces and we're down to 4, and I'll show you what I did. Again, there's no air in the tire, so that number is kind of arbitrary, but it gives you a good idea. So basically, I just marked 12 points around the rim and then 1 on the tire, and I just tried it at each one of those 12 points. And you could see this is really rough. Went from 10 ounces, 8, 6, 4, and then I started to go back up. So I just went back to position 5, and that's where we got the 4 1/4. So now we're going to reseat the bead, pump it up to about 50 psi, and then actually balance it for once and for all. Now we'll put 50 psi in it. All right, now we got 50 psi in there, and like I said, we've gone from whatever it needed, 9 before, or now to 4. And that was just by rotating the tire and putting the light spot on the highest weight spot of the rim. So I kind of like just basically just matching that. A little tedious. I don't think any tire shop's going to do this, but if you have a way to spin this on an axle and kind of figure out where the high spot is on the rim and match it up with the light spot on the tire, you'll get better. So anyway, let's put 4 ounces on there and get these onto the car. Another 0, 0. Awesome. All right, well, there is the first look at the Petlas tires on the 24 bolts installed. Thinking they look pretty good. Can't wait to go try this out on the road. Alright, so we got the Petlas tires on there. We got an open stretch of highway, so now we're just going to go up and see how it goes. Alright, 30, 40, 45, 50. It's like the slowest 0 to 60 ever. There's 60. 65. Alright, so there's about 70 miles an hour, 72. And the steering wheel's nice and smooth. It's not too loud at all. I would say that's a lot better than even the Beads and the other tires. Alright, so the Petlas tires are installed, and actually I'm very happy. We took it out on the highway, got it up to about 70 miles an hour, and it wasn't Lexus smooth, but it was actually much better than the Bajas with all the balancing beads I'm running. And so right now I'm running no balancing beads. I'm running I'm not running into the Hummer rings. I can add those later, but surprisingly it's actually pretty smooth with just metal weights. I think the one tire took 9 ounces. All the other ones were 4 to 6 ounces total. And I did balance them statically, not dynamically. That just means I put weights in the middle and not on either side. But either way, I mean, it rides good. They're not loud. So far, as far as a street use, they look like they're going to work good. So, like I said at the beginning of this, I do take it on the beach. I do take it on trails occasionally, not too much. No heavy-duty rock crawling. So, I expect it to do well in those, and I will document the times where I do take it off-roading. But for now, I mean, for driving to work and driving around town and driving to the beach, I think it's going to work out good. Now, at risk of losing viewership, I'll kind of just explain it real quick. But I mean, it's a simple calculation. It's a 37-inch tall tire. So pi r squared comes out with about 1,000 square inches of sidewall. Subtract out the 200 square inches you get from the 16.5 inch rim, and you get 800 inches of sidewall. So at 40 psi, that means there's 34,000 pounds of pressure here. Now, obviously, not all of that is focused right here. The tread's going to take half of that. The rest of it's going to be here. So roughly over the 52 inches of tread, you're going to have about 350 pounds of pressure per inch all the way around. So that's considerable amount. Even at 10 psi, you still have about 90 pounds per inch of sidewall on each side. So they're going to stay on there. But yes, if you go too low, or you do get, you know, if you're off-roading and rock's really pushing on, yeah, you might lose a bead. And so yes, eventually I'll either run these, or I'll run the Trailworthy Fab or some home fabricated PVC. But for now, just to get these on there and drive it on the highway, we're going to run no. And honestly, that's probably the most popular thing right now. So here's a quick side-by-side comparison of the BF Goodwrench Bajas versus the Petlas. See, you know, it has an aggressive sidewall, but not, you know, nothing over the top. The tread, super simple, like S's and blocks. A little bit more intricate here. It looks like the Petlas might be a bit wider. I mean, I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell. Maybe it bulges a little bit.